آل محمد صلوات. کہاں جائے آخر بیابان ہر سو، شکستہ ہے پہلو اکیلی ہے زہرا. کہاں جائے آخر بیابان ہر سو، شکستہ ہے پہلو اکیلی ہے زہرا. رونے پہ پہرا مصائب کا صحرا اکیلی ہے زہرا. در فاطمہ کو جلایا ہے تم نے، کیا وعدہ اپنا بھلایا ہے تم نے. تماچے نہ مارو مسلمانوں جاؤ، علی کو بلاؤ اکیلی ہیں زہرا. رونے پہ پہرا مصائب کا صحرا اکیلی ہیں زہرا. بیاں کس سے جا کر کروں درد اپنا، ہے غیروں کی دنیا نہیں کوئی اپنا. کوئی جا کے بابا سے کہہ دو یہ جا کر کہ لے جاؤ آ کر اکیلی ہیں زہرا. رونے پہ پہرا مصائب کا صحرا اکیلی ہیں زہرا. اے لخت جگر اے حسن ابن حیدر، یہ نانا کے پہلو میں سونے نہ دیں گر. تم آ جانا پہلو میں سو جانا ماں کے بقی میں، یہاں پر اکیلی ہیں زہرا. رونے پہ پہرا مصائب کا صحرا اکیلی ہیں زہرا. اور محمد و آل محمد صلوات.
محمد و آل محمد صلوات. بارے دیگر صلوات. مطلع شمس امامت ہے جناب فاطمہ، ملکہ شاہ ولایت ہے جناب فاطمہ، مبتلا ظلم امت ہے جناب فاطمہ، یعنی محروم وراثت ہے جناب فاطمہ. چھپ نہیں سکتی حقیقت چشم حق آثار سے فاطمہ کو خالی لوٹایا گیا در بار سے فاطمہ کو خالی لوٹایا گیا در بار سے ظلم امت نے کیے وہ بعد محبوب خدا اپنے مرقد میں محمد کا کلیجہ ہل گیا در گرا کے پہلوے زہرا کو زخمی کر دیا ہو گئی حق دے شقاوت قتل محسن کو مت نگر چے ہر گواہ معصوم تھا رو کے چلائی خبر لو بادشاہ ہے مشرقین آئی روزے پر نبی کے فاطمہ با شور و شین آئی روزے پر نبی کے فاطمہ با شور و شین صلوات بھیجیں ماما وہ ستم مجھ پر ہوئے ہیں اے شہ عالی وقار شدت صدمات سے پھٹ جائے قلب کو حصار دن بدل جاتے سیاہ راتوں میں ہوتا یہ فشار کس سے میں جا کر کروں فریاد غم جز کردگار اپنے مرقد میں چھپا لو تنگ ہوں جینے سے میں پاس اپنے اب بلا لو تنگ ہوں جینے سے میں پاس اپنے بلا لو تنگ ہوں جینے سے میں بابا کے غم میں جو روتی تھی وہ نیک نام کرتے تھے ہمسائے آ کر تب علی سے یوں کلام، تنگ رونے سے ہے زہرا کے سبھی شاہ انام، کہیے اب یہ فاطمہ زہرا کو جا کر یا امام، دن کو روئے وہ اگر رات کو آرام ہو، شب کو گر رویا کریں دن کو تو اب آرام ہو، جب یہ کیا کر علی نے فاطمہ زہرا سے بات، رو کے بولی جا کے یہ لوگوں سے کہہ دو با التفات، چند دن کی ہوں میں ماں اے شہ والا صفات، تنگ امت نے کیا ہے اس قدر اے نیک ذات، کوئی آئے گا نہ پھر ان کو ستانے کے لیے، میں تو خود بے تاب ہوں دنیا سے جانے کے لیے، میں تو خود بے تاب ہوں دنیا سے جانے کے لیے، مطلع شمس امامت ہیں جناب فاطمہ، صلوات۔
محمد وآل محمد صلوات۔
اللہم صل علی
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Like yesterday, the sisters are welcome to come into the musalla area. The partition is up. And if they want to come into the musalla area, and there's space for the sisters to be able to join on that side, to be able to participate in the program, inshallah. For the love of Her Eminence Lady Fatimiyyah al-Zahra, one loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala. We will need 2 sets of verses. If you can please have them open so that we can study them together, inshallah. We will need Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter number 2 of the Quran, verses 177 and 178. Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 177, 178. No, sorry, 178, 179. Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 178, 179. And then chapter number 23, Surah Al-Mu'minun, verses 12, 13, and 14. We will need it in that order as well, inshallah. So if you have it open from Surah Al-Baqarah first, and then Surah Al-Mu'minun after. For the love of the awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi, Ajjalallahu ta'ala faraj al-Sharif, one loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا الممجد بشير المصدق المصطفى الأمجد محمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم القصاص في القتلى الحر بالحر والعبد بالعبد والأنثى بالأنثى فمن عفي له من أخيه شيء فاتباع بالمعروف وأداء إليه بإحسان ذلك تخفيف من ربكم ورحمة فمن اعتدى بعد ذلك فله عذاب أليم آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل. Awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, my respected teachers, elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Our series is dedicated to commemorating the martyrdom anniversary of Her Eminence Lady Fatimiyyah al-Zahra, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayha. We extend our condolences to the Imam of our time and to all the mu'mineen and mu'minat. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the ziyarah of Sayyidah Zahra alayha salam fi dunya wal akhirah, her intercession fi dunya wal akhirah, and that whatever hajat that we have, Ya Allah, accept them tonight, bi haqqi Fatima alayha salam. Our series is addressing some of the real controversial issues that arise within our communities. Last night, we looked at the so-called famous verse of the Quran entitled the wife-beating verse, Surah An-Nisa, verse number 34. The idea that if a wife is nashizah, she is religiously disobedient towards her husband, that the Quran offers remedies for that. For example, the first is that you can admonish. The second is that you can separate from the marital bed. And then third, وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ. You're permitted to be able to strike her. We analyzed this particular set of ayat from a number of different angles. Number one, that the Quran shows that a person can be nashiz, religiously disobedient, breaking the huquq that are from one side or the other. That is not only that a woman may be nashiza, disobedient, but also that a man can be disobedient, nashiz towards his wife. This is mentioned explicitly within the Quran. And that also both sides can transgress against the other one as well. Therefore, there is potential that the wife can be disobedient, the husband can be disobedient, and both of them can be disobedient against one another. The Quran has 3 explicit ayat on these particular tarafain, on these different sides. Then we looked at the traditional opinion. The traditional opinion about the so-called wife-beating verse is that this is a means of amr bil ma'ruf wa nahi anil munkar. For you to beat your wife is something religiously good. Why? It's like, and according to the scholar that we surveyed yesterday, Ayatollah Sheikh Fadil As-Saffar, a leading scholar from Hawza of Karbala, his view, it is no different to when you beat your child. You're trying to put discipline in that person. So he equates your wife like a child. And then of course comes the normal justifications and the normal practices. Take only a miswak, you cannot cause bloodshed, you cannot cause bruising. You've all heard of these particular issues before, I'm sure. Then we looked into the next sort of opinion, And for example, amongst the Marajit, there is opinions. One we quoted from Ayatollah Sayyid Sadiq Shirazi. His view is that actually the Quran provides a basis of equal rights between husband and wife. وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. The duties that are for her are the same as that are upon her, bil-ma'ruf, in the station of goodness and righteousness. Therefore, if he is potentially allowed to have recourse to these three ways of disciplining his wife, then actually there is equal rights. And his opinion is that what? A woman also has the right to be able to have recourse in these same ways. That she gets to be able to tell her husband off if he breaks the rules. She can separate from the marital bed, and she can also hit him. That changes the game, doesn't it? Because all of a sudden now, instead of it being so one-sided, some Maraji consider this to be equality between the two. Then we took a third opinion. We said that actually there is an opinion that says that we can say that this idea of violence and beating as a means of disciplining one's partner is a very outdated idea and needs to actually be reflected on very, very deeply. Amongst the Shia fuqaha, there is an opinion of the idea of what's called naskh aqli, that we can rationally say that this practice is no longer relevant for our time. The Quran can talk about it, we say it's no longer applicable for us in the practical sense. We do naskh of it, abrogated. How? Rationally and morally, we say it is wrong to practice this particular behavior. We gave a hujjah, a dalil. For example, we all understand now that even though the Quran legislates for slaves, we realize that in our context, slavery is immoral. Now we can say that the Quran was working towards, Islam was working towards stopping the idea of slavery. At that time, prior to Islam, there was no rules for slaves. You could do what you want. Similarly, prior to Islam, when it came to the treatment of women, there was no rules. You could do what you want. The Quran came and put rules and regulations humanizing and giving treatment to slaves. Similarly, it also gave humanization and treatment towards women, children, wives, partners, husbands. But the same way we have outgrown the idea through maturing as a human civilization that we don't have slaves, the third view is that we actually mature past violence. This is a huge problem within our communities. Don't let anyone tell you it's not. They are lying to you. If one person says, well, I don't have this in my family, okay. But believe me, in the majority of family units in the Indo-Pak community, in the Iraqi, in the Irani communities, the Shia communities, domestic violence is rampant. I can't tell you how many cases we have to deal with. I can't tell you how many times we get the phone call. I can't tell you how many times we have to find safe refuge for a woman in a family. Or when it comes to divorce or marital counseling, these issues are brought up. Abuse and violence is rampant within our community. Instead of utilizing this verse for the sake of abuse and religiously justifying these behaviors, actually we have a chance to be able to re-understand that the Quran wasn't giving religious justification for violence. It was trying to weed it out. It was actually trying to stop it. And there was actually a maturing process in humanity that we were supposed to be able to reach to. This is what we discussed yesterday. Tonight, inshallah, we take the discussion on one step further. God forbid, if there has been violence within the family, husband towards wife, wife towards husband, and there has been a mark or there's been an injury, there is religiously a compensation that is wajib to be paid. That is called Diya. There is a financial compensation that has to be paid from the one that meted out the violence. It could be husband towards wife. It could be father towards child. It could be mother towards child. But if there has been this abuse, then from the Islamic perspective, there is a diya to be paid. How much is that? Or worse still, we are seeing that there's a growing problem within many communities towards the issue of abortion as well. Sometimes people before marriage get into physical relationships, they fall into a trap. They want to be able to abort the child. Or because of the cost of living crisis and the fear of how much a child will cost, they abort the child. Or, for example, because there is some sort of maybe physical defect in the child, then they want to get rid of the child. Sadly, this also happens within our communities. There is a diya to be paid from the mother or the father or even the doctor who participates in this, who willingly participates in this. There's a diya to be paid. How much is this diya? And how does this actually help us to be able to stop these practices as well? Inshallah, tonight, this will be our discussion in honor of Her Eminence Lady Fatimiyyah al-Zahra, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayha. Please open your Qur'ans to chapter number 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 178, 179, for us to be able to introduce the topic from the Qur'anic perspective. Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 178 and 179. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, kutiba alaykum al-qisasu fil qatla. O you who believe, retaliation, qisas, life for a life. If someone is killed or someone is injured in such a way that they lose a part of their body, they lose an eye, they lose an arm, they lose a tooth, then qisas is permitted. You are allowed to be able to get likewise to the other person. Al-hurr bil-hurr, wal-abdu bil-abd, wal-untha bil-untha. So in the matter of the slain, a free person is killed for the free person. The slave is killed in replacement of the slave, and the female for killing the female. And if you choose not to be able to take this, life for a life, or body part for a body part, there is a diya that can be paid instead, which is recommended to be paid. In order to save life, there is a diya to be paid. فَمَنْ عُفِيَ لَهُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ شَيْءٌ فَاتِّبَاعٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And if any remission is made to anyone by the aggrieved brother, then this should be paid according to a usage. وَأَدَاءٌ إِلَيْهِ بِإِحْسَانٍ. Ida, there is a diya to be paid, a compensation that is to be paid. There's compensation that can be paid in replacement of taking like for like, or in some aspects when life is not taken, but an injury is occurring, diya can also be paid. So, number one, there's qisas. This is life for a life, or an act for an act. If a person chooses to abstain from that, then there's a diya to be paid. Number two. Number three, in acts where, for example, one has not lost his tooth or his eye, but someone has been struck, there's a wound on the body, there's a cut on the body, down to the smallest amount, there is a diya to be paid. So diya comes here twice, and qisas comes once. The ayah continues. ذَلِكَ تَخْفِيفٌ مِّن رَبِّكَ وَرَحْمَةٌ. This is an alleviation from your Lord and a mercy. This is a way to deal with each other well. Rather than continuing on conflict, rather than being lawless, there's actually a way to be able to resolve these matters, which is an alleviation, to make things khafif, lightened for yourself, and the rahmah from Allah. فَمَنِ اعْتَدَى بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ فَلَهُ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Whoever exceeds the limit after this, he shall have a painful chastisement. Verse 179. وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاتٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. And in this law of being able to get justice, there is actually life for you. This can bring about fairness. This can bring about goodness and life, not death, if you follow these laws. Why? Because instead of allowing killing to continuously occur, instead of allowing warring parties or families or tribes to take revenge continuously on one another, if we can remove that and get justice between people, then this stops the ongoing nature of conflict. And this is the ultimate goal that is mentioned from the Quran and from the Ahadith. Number one, you can see that this is mentioned within the Quran. Many people know that there is such a thing as qasas and diya, but they have no concept as to how it applies to their life or to wider life within Muslim countries and within Muslim nations. Would you be surprised if I told you that Her Eminence Lady Fatima salawatullah wa salamuhu alayha has talked about this subject, diya, in her sermon to those who usurped her rights, those who were present within Masjid Nabawi. She herself addressed this matter on a number of different occasions actually. Why? Number one, from the perspective of Sharia, this is a very important aspect within Sharia. It cannot be overlooked. Just because someone thinks, well, I've hurt someone and then that's the end of the matter. It's not the end of the matter from the Sharia perspective. There is accountability in dunya that will alleviate accountability in akhirah. Number one. Number two, from the perspective of Fatima salamullahi alayha, she had rights in two ways. Number one, for herself when she was attacked. The way in which she was attacked, there had to be diya, it was wajib to be paid out for her, the attack upon her. When we talk about the nail that pierced her chest, the sorts of ahadith that talked about that she was kicked, that she was slapped, that she was whipped, whatever happened to her, salamullahi alayha, whatever attack upon her, compensation was religiously due to her. Number two, from the perspective of her unborn child, someone, particularly Umar ibn al-Khattab, attacked her child, killing her child, causing a miscarriage to her child. Sayyid Muhsin, salamullahi alayh, there is a diya that is to be paid there as well. So do not think that this topic is outside of the ambit of history, and do not think that this is a topic outside of the present topic. It is both that is reoccurring in both cases. Lady Fatima salamullahi alayha contextualizes diya in this way in her servants. Antum ibadullahi nusubu amrihi wa nahyihi wa hamalatu dinihi wa wahyihi wa umana'ullahi ala anfusikum wa bulagha'uhu ila al-umam. Sayyidah Zahra alayhi salam tells this to the mu'mineen inside Masjid Nabawi. You are the servants of Allah. You are the ones that are supposed to maintain the injunctions and the prohibitions of Allah. The injunctions includes diya. The prohibitions include this as well. You are the carriers of the religion of Allah and His revelation. You are the trustees of Allah upon your own souls and the propagators of His religion to the other nations of the world. If me and you don't uphold the injunctions, the ayat in the book of Allah to ourselves, we're not in a position to be able to carry it out to others. If we can't institute justice within our own selves, then we will never be able to institute justice to others. Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha, in her statements, she said the following: Ja'alallahu al-adla tansiqan lil-qulub. Allah has rendered justice as a means of harmonization in the hearts. God forbid if a wife has transgressed the husband husband has transgressed the wife, or the father or the mother have transgressed the child. That stays. But when justice is served between them, and they both seek to be able to put it aright, this is tansiqan lil qulub. It is a means of harmonization within the hearts of those particular individuals. Again, Lady Fatima salamullahi alayha says, Ja'alallahu al-qisasa hiqnan lid-dama. Allah has made the laws of retaliation and the laws of payment as a security from blood being shed. Rather than escalation occurring, allowing us to nip the matter in the bud in the ways in which the Sharia prescribes. These are the statements from Her Eminence Fatimah al-Zahra, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayha. As per the verse, if you keep the verse open in front of you, chapter 2, verse 178 to 179, the starting is actually qisas, a life for a life. Or if particular bodily damage is done, like for like. When we say particular bodily damage, we're specifically talking about parts of the body that have been removed, parts of the body that have been cut off. God forbid someone causes an accident. This is one way in which things can be dealt with. Or, God forbid, it's on purpose. Someone cuts off an ear or gouges out an eye, kills someone. There is like for like in the Sharia. Or you can take the Diya, that is payment for that. This is preferable in order to be able to resolve the matter and not allow any life to become wasted. Across the West Asian world, where Islamic law still is prevalent, you will see that the laws of qisas are prevalent. Iran, Hijaz, even in Kuwait, Diya is paid. Iraq, qisas and Diya is still paid. So these are not issues that are exclusive to the history of the world. It is prevalent even until now, right now. There are laws for it. God forbid, if someone actually kills someone and they have to pay that person a Diya. Ahadith give different amounts and provide different opportunities for a person to be able to pay an amount. Amongst the ahadith, there are normally 6 payments that can be made. One of 6 payments that can be made as Diya for killing someone as a means of resolving the matter financially. Hadith say, for example, the payment is 100 camels, or 200 cows, or for example, 200 pairs of clothes, or for example, 200 sheep, or for example, 1,000 dinar, gold coins, or 10,000 dirham, silver coins. According to the Maraja al-Kiram, they state it is what's known as wajib takhyiri. You have a choice as to which one of the 6 you pay. If I killed someone from your family, you can't force me to pay one. I choose one of the 6. Normally a person will probably choose the cheapest. The cheapest is either 10,000 dirham or 200 pieces of clothes, sets of clothes. Cheapest. The most expensive would be what? 100 camels. In today's amount, if I said to you, 100 camels have to be paid, what is the equivalent amount in dollars today? Does anyone know? If you went to Yemen and you purchased 100 camels, so you went to Iran, you purchased 100 camels to pay off a Diya. Yeah, let's say you're driving recklessly, God forbid, you're speeding, you don't care about anyone else, you're doing 90 down the motorway, and you smack into someone and you cause an accident on purpose. That's just as an example. Then you have to pay the Diya. You have to purchase 100 camels as an example. How much would it cost? So, depending, because of course camels can cost different amounts in different locations. From Hijaz to Iran, currently the cost is anywhere between 60,000 to 100,000 US dollars. So you would have to pay that amount as Diya for the life. It's very interesting. What do you think? Just as a constructive thought, $100,000 for a life, or $60,000 for a life. You can Google this yourself when you get time. Google this when you get some time, inshallah. You know, a stay-at-home mom. A stay-at-home mom. Someone who does 14 hours a day at home. Mom, cooking, cleaning, chauffeuring, education. Do you know how much economists have placed upon 1 year's equivalent salary for a stay-at-home mum, it's $180,000 per annum. That's what they're worth with the amount of work that they do. So we have a historical amount that the fuqaha have to stick to. But if you kill someone purposefully, you might end up paying $60,000 or $100,000, maybe maximum, depending on the quality of the camel. Or you can pay it off by buying 200 pieces of clothes. How much is 200 long dishdashes? It's not much. So we have an issue here. The reason why I raise it is for you to think about it in the context of Sayyidah Fatima salamullahi alayha. When you kill a person like Fatima salamullahi alayha, fine, the Sharia sets an amount in Diya. Her life was worth 100 camels. Okay, the Diya is the Diya. But really what we're saying is you're taking away a life. Can you see? When you take away from the humanity, someone as important as Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha, you have done damage throughout the universe itself. You have done damage to the entirety of humanity and history at large. Diya cannot compensate for this. Just because you pay off an amount. Similarly, when you do damage to a family unit like this, we have to understand that these are financial compensations, but really the extent of the damage that is done to a family unit, to a community, to a nation, in some ways can never be replaced by the types of things that people do. And this gets us to think about Her Eminence, the value of Lady Fatima Zahra, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayha. Now, I want to bring the topic of abortion, forcing a miscarriage, and also the act of violence either towards a spouse, a family member, or child. I kid you not when I say to you the amount of phone calls I receive regarding this every single year. Right now, dealing with one case as an example, where husband has been violently abusive to the wife and to the children. Right now, dealing with the case in the community. A little while back, I remember receiving a phone call. A father-in-law beat up his daughter-in-law in our community, Khawaja, Shia, UK-based community dealing with these issues. A father-in-law beat up his own daughter-in-law. These things really happen. Don't for a second think Allah is oblivious. Don't for a second think that you get away with these things. I would much rather you pay the diya in dunya than have to face the consequences of these things in akhirah. This is why when I say to you, these issues within the family unit need to be resolved, need to be where husband and wife sit down and reconcile some of these issues that have played out, even if they're long past, to be able to resolve them, either asking forgiveness. Not everyone has to ask for diya. You don't have to take the compensation. You can agree to sulh. You can put these things behind you, move forward. But if someone has meted out violence on their partner and has not asked for forgiveness or not paid that compensation, then it remains upon their shoulders. Just because you've forgotten about it doesn't mean Allah has forgotten about it. So I want to be able to show you from the fatwa of His Eminence Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Hussein As-Sistani, may Allah protect him for us, his fatwa on these topics, and I want to be able to match it with the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhim ajma'een. Please open your Qur'ans to chapter number 23, Surah Al-Mu'minun. Verses 12, 13, and 14. Now, why I bring this up is that it contextualizes the 2 or 3 ahadith that we are going to read. So long as you understand these verses, and as I read the ahadith about the compensation becomes very, very vivid, very, very clear for me and you to be able to understand. In this set of verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the stages of the unborn child. So here, when conception takes place, there are several stages of growth of the fetus to the point of 4 months when ensoulment takes place. And then from then on, from 4 months to 9 or 4 months to 10, when birth takes place. Depending on when a child is aborted, a baby, a fetus is aborted, depending on the age of the fetus, depends on the amount of diya for that aborted fetus, for that aborted baby. So we need to show you this from the Quran, and then I'll show you this from the ahadith, and then we'll show you the fatwa of Sayyid Sistani, and I'll show you the amount that is required to be paid for that. Verse number 12, 13, 14. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ سُلَالَةٍ مِّنْ طِينٍ. Certainly we created man of an extract of clay. ثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاهُ نُطْفَةً فِي قَرَارٍ مَكِينٍ. So you can see here in the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about various stages. We created him min sulalatin. Next stage, nutfa. ثُمَّ خَلَقْنَا النُّطْفَةَ عَلَقَةً. The next stage is alaqa. We made it a clot that leaches onto the womb. فَخَلَقْنَا الْعَلَقَةَ مُضْغَةً. Then we turned it into a lump of flesh. فَخَلَقْنَا الْمُضْغَةَ عِظَامًا. Then we made it into bones. فَكَسَوْنَا الْعِظَامَ لَحْمًا. Then we turned that into more flesh, into meat, into having it. ثُمَّ أَنْشَأْنَاهُ خَلْقًا آخَرَ. Then we made it into the latter stage of its creation. فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. Blessed be Allah, the best of creators. There are various stages within the womb. Depending on what stage a fetus is aborted would determine the amount that diya is paid. Let me mention to you one or two of the ahadith just to be able to give us a flavor, and then I want you to open the fatwa of Sayyid Sistani. I'll tell you what to be able to search for yourselves, inshaAllah. So I'm reading to you from Kitab Wasa'il al-Shi'a by the great scholar Al-Hur Al-Amiri, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh. This is the most prominent book of ahadith which the fuqaha return to in order to be able to make their fatwa. I'll mention just one or two hadith to give you a flavor of how they talk about this particular matter. I'm reading from page 129 in the bab, in the chapter of this particular issue, hadith number 4, hadith number 8, and hadith number 10, if anyone wants it online, if anyone wants to be able to search it for themselves. Hadith comes to us from our fifth Imam, Muhammad al-Baqir, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. The companion Muhammad ibn Muslim, one of the most closest companions of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, قال سألت أبا جعفر عليه السلام. I asked Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, عن الرجل يضرب المرأة فتطرح النطفة. I asked about a man who beats his wife such that she miscarries her baby. فقال عليه السلام عليه 20 دينارا. فقلت يضربها فتطرح العلقة. What about if he struck her but the baby was at the stage of being العلقة, clot that was still against the wall of the womb? فقال عليه 40 دينارا. The payment is now 40 dinar. فقلت يضربها فتطرح المضغة. What about when it's at the stage of being مضغة? فقال عليه 60 دينارا. It is now 60 dinar. فقلت فيضربها فتطرح وقد صار له عظم. What about when it's at the stage of having bones? And he continues all the way to the point of ensoulment. Another hadith, this one comes to us from Ali ibn al-Husayn Zayn al-Abidin salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. عن رجل ضرب امرأة حاملا برجله. This time the question comes to Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, what about a man who kicks his wife? Not beat, kicks his wife while she is pregnant. فطرحت ما في بطنها ميتا. What is in the womb perishes and dies. And then again he gives a different amount for the different stages of the development that are mentioned. Another hadith comes to us this time from Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. And again, similarly, the question comes, في رجل ضرب امرأة فألقت علقة. Again, he strikes his wife and she loses the baby. It's not only someone who strikes at their partner, it can be that the mother decides that she wants to be able to abort the child if she herself does this. This is also mentioned within the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Hadith this time comes to us from our sixth Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. عن أبي عبد الله عليه السلام في امرأة شربت دواء وهي حامل لتطرح ولدها فألقت ولدها. She drinks something in order to cause an abortion within herself. She loses her child. She aborts her own child. What is the Diya? And again, the Imam breaks down the stages of the fetus's development to determine the amount that is aborted. Why is this important? One, it can potentially be the husband or the father that causes the miscarriage. It can be the wife, she does it herself, or it can be both of them that does it, or it can be one of them that goes to a doctor. Upon all of them who participates in this act willingly is a diya for them to be paid. How much is that diya? Please open your Qur'ans, please open your Google and search the following. Just type the following in for me. Sistani.org, sistani.org, and then, so this is in the search bar, Sistani.org, blood money, and then press enter. Inshallah, the same page comes up for us all. What comes up for everybody? Does it say blood money, brackets, Diya, question and answer? Yes? Please open this. Here, there are two questions. Just for the moment, just scroll down to the second question. Just for the moment, forget the first question. We'll come to the first one. Just scroll down to the second question. Everybody's with me? Yes? Yes, yes? Ahsan. Okay, read it with me. Question. What is the blood money for aborting a child? Who is the blood money given to? Who receives the blood money? So we're asking who pays and who gets the money. Everybody with me? Yes? Answer. Let's read it together, inshallah. In case the mother aborts the child, she must give the blood money, the diya, to the father or to the heirs. And if the father carries out the abortion or causes the miscarriage, the blood money is obligatory upon him and he must give it to the mother. So obviously whoever is responsible has to pay the diya. If it is the doctor who carries out the abortion, it is obligatory on him to give the blood money, although he may abort the child on the parents' request, though they would share in the sin. He, the doctor, or of course she, the doctor, must give the blood money except for when the heirs exempt him. So, if there is a doctor that participates, they have to give the blood money. So just to make this clear, there's an amount. Let's just, for the sake of the moment, call it £100. It's not £100, but we'll call it £100. If the father commits the miscarriage, the entirety of the £100 is on him. If the mother and the father commit it, is it £100 each? No. Half. 50 upon the father, 50 upon the mother. And if there's a third person, like a doctor involved, or however many doctors involved, 2, 3, 4, all of them share in the total amount, £100. So £100 each, they total have to give their share of the amount. Whom receives it? Well, you can't give it to the one that's been killed. So you have to give it to their inheritors. And as you know, in inheritance, there's tabaqat. So the first tabaqa is to the parents. Now, if both parents are the ones who committed murder and killed their own child in the womb or after birth because of some medical defect, whatever it may be, you can't give the diya to the parent, can you? The father cannot give it to the mother and the mother give it to the father. Why? Because in Sharia, a killer does not inherit. So who inherits? Who knows their tabaqat in irth? The siblings of the child would inherit, if there is one. So if there's another son or another daughter, let's say they have one child, the second one, God forbid, they felt was going to carry some defect. And they said, we're going to get rid of the child. The diya is to be paid to the first child. That person receives that money as the inheritor. Or above to the grandparents, and in the absence of the grandparents, the uncles and the aunties. So this is how it is supposed to be paid out. Carry on reading, inshallah. It would suffice the blood money of the fetus into which soul has entered to give 525 mithqal of silver. That is when the fetus is male, and if it is female, half the diya is to be paid. As a measure of obligatory precaution, the diya of the fetus which dies in the womb is also the same. If the fetus is a zygote, i.e. between 0 to 40 days, remember we mentioned the stages of the age of the child, 0 to 40 days, 105 mithqal of silver would suffice. If it's 40 to 80 days, 210 mithqals of silver. 80 to 120 days, 315. If the fetus has bones, adhmun, 420 mithqal of silver suffices. And if it is developed into a complete human body, then 525 mithqals of silver are to be paid. And number 6, if it reaches the point of 4 months, an ensoulment has taken place. If the soul has taken place, then for a male is 5,250 mithqal of silver, and for a female half that, 2,625. Look at the asterisk at the bottom. Every mithqal of silver is the equivalent to 4.64 grams of silver. Okay, now we have to work this out. Who knows how much is 4.64 grams of silver? So Google this. Go to Google. We'll have a look, inshallah. So how much is a how much is 4.64 grams of silver? How much is 4.64 grams of silver? So, as an example, there is a website, Coin Apps, that has come up. Can you see it? It's the first one that comes up. You can scroll down towards the bottom. Enter total number of grams. 4.64 grams. Total silver value, $3.55. So every gram, so 4.64 grams is how much? $3. How much? $3.55. So now go to your calculators in your phones. $3.55. So, Sayyid Sistani says, if the soul has entered the body, it's 5,250 mithqal of silver. Every mithqal is 4.64 grams. 4.64 grams is $3.55. So the calculation, the math is what? $3.55 times by 5,250 times by 5,250. What's the amount of diya? $18,637. If a person aborts a child at the point of 4 months, the diya that has to be paid is $18,637. According at least to my maths. I could be wrong. If you have a better maths, then please show it to me. I could be wrong. Just did a quick search on that. This is a real issue. You can't tell me that people don't do this. Even within the Muslim community, within the Shia community, I can assure you it happens. I can assure you that sadly people either abort their child or force a miscarriage upon their other partner. Violence, abuse. How many times this happened? Every single time within our community. The diya that has to be paid is $18,637. Go back to the statement of His Eminence Sayyid Sistani. Go back to the first question at the top. First question from Sayyid Sistani. Is it up there? Yeah, the first question. Everybody can read it with me. What is indemnity? What is the diya for beating a child, or a man beating his wife, or someone beating someone else, leaving a scar on his or her body? You can read it. Is it there? First question. If a person hits another person on the face and his skin turns red, the diya is 1.5 dinar. If the face turns blue or green, the diya is 3 dinar. If the face turns black, the blood money is 6 dinar. Look at the asterisk. 1 dinar is the equivalent to 3.5 grams of 21 karat gold. So now we have to do another calculation. Let's go back to Google. How much is a gram of gold? Enter. Gold.co.uk. Maybe this one isn't, I don't know. Are you able to work that out? Is it come up? So 1 gram, how much is a gram of gold? What do you have? What does it come up for you? 60? 60 what? Dollars? For 1 gram? Okay. So now Sayyid Sistani, as an example, says, that's 21 karat gold. Yes? So he says it's 3.5 grams. 1 dinar is 3.5 grams. So 1 gram was how much? $65, yes? Point? 0.45. Times by 3.5. $229 per dinar. 1 dinar. Let's take one mas'ala. If someone causes a black eye, what does Sayyid Sistani says? Hafidhahullah. If the face turns black, the blood money is 6 dinar. So 6 dinar times by $229, 1,374. The blood money for giving someone a black eye, just a black eye, is $1,374. Again, according to my maths, you can check it for yourself and you can follow the mas'ala yourself. Imagine, God forbid, someone hits more than once. Sometimes when you get into a fight, there's a black eye here, there's a bruise here, there's a bruise there. God forbid. So you're not only playing for 1 black eye, you're playing
2 black eyes, a broken here, a bruise there, and so on and so forth. It's going to become quite expensive to get into these fights at home. God forbid. Look, the reason why I raise this topic with you is Her Eminence herself, Fatima Salamullahi alayha, states that when we give justice, this is tansiqan lil qulub. It is a means of harmonizing the hearts. It actually resolves many of the matters. But also we have to realize that the moment one realizes that they have to pay this sort of amount back to their husband or to their wife or to their child for beating them, maybe inshallah they would actually stop doing it. Maybe this is the means to stop doing it. Maybe someone will fear that they'll be taken to the Hakim Shara, that they'll be forced to pay it. They'll be taken to their family, they'll be forced to pay it. That this is an embarrassment, that they don't have that money, or maybe they don't want to be able to pay out these sorts of things. Whatever we can do, however the Sharia can cope and stop people from engaging in these sorts of behaviors, the Sharia uses these sorts of methodologies. So, sadly, because we have these sorts of practices and behaviors within our community, we have to be able to resolve them. If someone, God forbid, has done this, they can go and seek forgiveness and resolve it there and then. They can do sulh and give a different amount that is agreed upon by the 2 parties, or they have to stick to the amount that is prescribed in the Diya itself. You may say, these are things that are, who pays blood money nowadays? This is the fatwa of the Marja himself, Sayyid Sistani, not Jafar Ladak, saying this is something available on his website that everybody can read for themselves. And we've shown to you the Quran and the Ahadith that support these sorts of things. If we can actually help to stop ourselves from these bad practices or these behaviors, it would go a long way within our communities. Why? As we will talk about tomorrow in the topic of family reconciliation, the biggest problem that we have within family units is inherited traumas and inherited behaviors. When parents fight in these ways, when they argue in these ways, it affects the psyche of the children. Tomorrow I will show you from the neurological development of the child how they themselves, through these traumas, inherit these behaviors themselves. And they carry on the cycle of violence. And they will bring it to their partners and to their children, and their children will bring it to their children. The only way we can stop these practices of abuse is to stop it within ourselves and to be able to deal with the reconciliation that is upon us. And part of that is the ahkam of the diyat that has been prescribed by the Quran, by the Holy Prophet Muhammadin al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Imagine Fatima salamullahi alayha wants to demand her rights. There's a famous saying that comes from the student of Ibn Abil Hadid, the great Mu'tazili Sunni scholar. Student asks his teacher, why did they not give Fadak back to Fatima salamullahi alayha? They knew what they did was wrong. They knew they stole and they usurped from her. Why did they not give her her land back? He responds by saying, if they had given Fadak back, then tomorrow she would have again come for her rights with regards to the khilafat of her husband, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. I could pose exactly the same question. After the attack on the house of Fatima salamullahi alayha and the killing of her unborn child Muhsin, why did she not go and say, where is my compensation, where is my diya? She had her right. But would these be the sorts of people that would actually give rights back? Because the moment they were to pay that compensation, then they would have admitted to the killings and the murders that they were culpable in. And this in history would have recorded it in that way. Or can you imagine Ali ibn Abi Talib seeking his right? Can you imagine him saying, "You have killed my unborn child. You have killed my wife"? The problem was, in Medina al-Munawwarah, many of them hated Fatima salamullahi alayha so much that they came towards Amir al-Mu'mineen and said, "We complain about your wife, that she is constantly crying, she is constantly seeking her rights, she is constantly speaking about what has occurred, what has befallen upon her. Tell her to either cry in the day or in the night, or tell her that she goes outside of the city and make her cry far outside the city so we don't have to hear the cries of Fatima." Look at the lines of poetry that she says, "Had this tragedy befallen upon me in the day, it would have turned the world to night." This is the extent of the tragedy upon her and the way in which she used to call for her rights in this way. I want you to imagine Ali ibn Abi Talib now has to give ghusl to Fatima al-Zahra. I want you to imagine that he has to run his hands over her body with that water. And inside that chamber, there is a loud scream that comes from Ali ibn Abi Talib, that he is broken in this moment. Maybe he sat down, maybe he slapped his face, maybe he was so struck by what he just felt, he didn't know what to do with himself. They asked him, they said, "Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, you are normally the strongest of people, but we heard you scream and cry and wail in a way in which we have never heard from you before. What happened inside that ghusl room?" All Ali can say is that all this time I did not know the extent of the injuries of my wife Fatima, but that she continued toiling day after day as a wife and as a mother. But when I felt her rib, when I pressed my hand to her chest and I felt the broken rib from inside her, this is when I realized the extent of what they had done to her. I will say to you, Ya Ali, if this is the scream that you let out when you felt the chest of Fatima, how did you feel when you ran your hand upon the belly of Fatima? Because only yesterday inside that blessed womb was your fifth child Muhsin that was inside that stomach, inside Fatima al-Zahra. I wonder, how did Ali ibn Abi Talib feel when he was giving ghusl and he pressed his hand over her belly, knowing that inside that womb lay his son Muhsin? I wonder then how Amir al-Mu'mineen felt in the darkness of the night, having to give the burial to Fatima al-Zahra. She says in her will, "Ya Ali, I want you to bury me at night and in secret, and I don't want anyone from the enemies to be allowed to perform my ziyarah or to come in the participation of the janazah. I will never forgive them for what they have done. I will say to you, if Allah says in the Quran, He will allow that child of the daughters, that child from amongst the polytheists to say, بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ, for what reason was I killed? On the day of judgment, Muhsin will have his right to be able to say to Umar, to Abu Bakr, to Qunfut, and to the 300 soldiers that were around that house, بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ, for what reason was I murdered? ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the appearance of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, to allow us to be alongside him at all times in our life and in our death. If we are to pass away from this world before his coming, Ya Allah, raise us from our graves so that we can partake in the victories of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. We ask you, Ya Allah, there are many people around the world going through such desperate times, those people in a state of war and oppression. Grant them all safety, security and victory for the sake of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Ya Allah, grant us the ziyarah of Lady Fatima fi dunya wal akhirah. And we ask you, Ya Allah, that if we have committed any mistakes like these that we have been talking about, may Allah forgive us and help us to be able to deal with the consequences that are upon us and to be able to resolve them within our family. Matim Hussein, Ya Hussein. Matim Fatima, Ya Fatima. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein.